So on the 10th of February 2011, I wrote to Swami Satyananda for guidance. I'll just read you the letter. Hari Om Swami Satyananda. You may be aware of the recent situation involving Swami at Manly Yoga Ashram. I'm one of the women who came forward to reveal his sexual misconduct to the Satyananda-yoga Academy. I'm writing to tell you of my experience, how deeply it has affected me, and to ask you for guidance. I lived at Mangrove Mountain Ashram for 3 years before I moved to Manly Yoga to teach yoga and do other karma yoga in June 2010. I've included for your information my brief statement about the incidents that took place at Manly Yoga. It was a very serious crime that may result in a jail sentence under Australian law. I've spoken with one of the other complainants and learnt that treated her with even more horrific sexual violence than he did me. I have reported to the police. I have not yet chosen to press charges against him. I understand that none of the other complainants have reported their experiences to the police. I am concerned that will reoffend because he apparently does not recognise that his sexual behaviour is unacceptable. I hope you can positively influence him in the interests of protecting other women from him. He has abused his power as a Swami and a yoga teacher to satisfy his own personal desires. This has had a traumatic and devastating effect on me, the other complainants, and the whole Manly Yoga community. This leads me to ask, why was initiated into Purna Sannyas? Can his status as a Swami be revoked? Why did Swami Niranjan give him this honour, which he clearly does not deserve? I've been disappointed that SYA has failed to express any compassion or kindness to myself or the other complainants. I have asked Swami Jayatma about this, and she told me that it was not SYA's role or responsibility. I'm confused about this because I had assumed that compassion and kindness were the duty of sannyasins, especially Swamis in all circumstances. But especially in circumstances like this, where people are experiencing trauma and suffering. During this process, I've been astonished that senior Swamis, in particular Jayatma, Kriyatma and Sadashiva, apparently do not consider it their duty to act with kindness or compassion towards myself and the other complainants. They appear to place great emphasis on dispassion and detachment at the expense of kindness and compassion. In light of this, I wonder if I have misunderstood the purpose of sannyas. I consider kindness and compassion to be qualities worth striving for. If dispassion and detachment override these qualities in practice, then I'm not sure I want them. I do not want to become the cold and heartless. I do not want to become cold and heartless in the process of developing a focused mind. If I continue on the path of sannyas, will I become cold and heartless like so many Swamis I know? Would I be better off in another tradition or with no tradition in order to develop my own kindness and compassion? Please offer me some guidance, as I am losing faith in the sannyas and Satyananda-yoga traditions. I now feel disgusted when I think about wearing yellow clothes, which were once sacred to me. I no longer have respect for the symbols of Guru clothing, shaved head, or title, because they are meaningless and have no bearing on the purity of the person within. I do not wish to return to Mangrove Mountain. I always thought I would become a karma sannyasin. Yet now that ideal has been tarnished for me by the swamis involved in this case. I do not want to become like them. I am not even sure if I want to be a sannyasin anymore. Could it be beneficial for me to explore other spiritual traditions? Perhaps I may find one that places more emphasis on developing the qualities that I value. Please help. Hari Om Tat Sat, Premjyoti. I'd like to also point out that had a history of sexual misconduct long before this happened. He had been identified previously as having problems in this area, although I believe that it was widely considered that he was simply promiscuous. He had had action taken against him for this behaviour before in the ashrams, including being moved to Rockland at one stage. When I spoke with Yoga Prabha, she said something along the lines of, "We always knew there was a problem, we just didn't know it was this serious." I think it was a mass case of ignorance on the part of many people at the most senior level who didn't recognise what he was doing was misconduct, was sexual abuse. I believe he'd been abusing women for many years and it had never been named. So that letter that I wrote to Swami Satyadharma, she never replied. In fact, she's never spoken a word to me since. Not one word. Although I have seen her. Not one word. Instead, what she did, without my permission, she gave that letter to Rishi Hridayanand, a woman that I would never ever ask for any kind of advice. Certainly not on something like this. Rishi Hridayananda wrote a letter to me, posted it through the mail, and I'm going to read you that letter now. Keeping in mind, I never asked her advice. This was postmarked 28th of March 2011. Hari Om Premjyoti, re your letter to Swami Satyadharma, date to 10th of February. So I wrote the letter on the 10th of February. I received the reply on the 28th of March. Swami Satyadharma has just returned from India and requested I reply to you. Swami Niranjan says there are 4 different characters when stepping into discipleship, and you may be considered the first type, where the purpose of association with Guru is only eradication of suffering, so one can live a happy, pleasant and comfortable life, better than what they had. When you take name and mantra, If you practice this as asked by Guru both morning and night, the components of faith, trust, belief and love are developed. If I were in your shoes, I would seriously look at your mind and why you are so negative. I suggest you visit Swami Niranjan and truly discuss your own problems directly with him, or see a counsellor for some guidance in your behaviour sexually. Why do you blame others? With all the techniques we use daily, and especially if jigyasu, the first ability to acquire is reflection or vichara. Then ask yourself, why have I come into spiritual life? Why do I wish to explore it? After all, negative thought is enough to create havoc in the mind. Keep your meditative awareness as a witness to each and every event. Now all this experience is well past. Learn to live in this moment now. You have to remember that taking Purna Sannyas does not make you a saint overnight. We receive the initiation and then have to study and reflect on all our hang-ups and habits. We also need to become truthful and follow the yamas and niyamas, but who is capable of doing this at the very beginning? It takes years to become aware of all our own faults and failures, and then learn to take full responsibility for all of our actions. The Guru only endorses what you decide for yourself. You are totally responsible for your own life, and it is only when we make a mistake and do not recognise our own faults and then blame them on someone else that the mind becomes negative. For me, you are a transmitter of Guru's Shakti. Keep this clean and bright. Continue your mantra and sadhana. Lead, kindly light. Save me from miserable plight. Shivananda-Hridayananda. Om Tat Sat Rishi Hridayananda for Satyananda-yoga Australia. And it's on Satyananda-yoga Academy letterhead. There's lots of little emails I won't go into reading, just a little from one in communications backwards and forwards between me and Jay Atma. This is in February 2011. I'm writing to Jay Atma. Has tried to contact both and since receiving the investigation findings, and I would be greatly relieved if you could prevent him contacting me. He also recently told that it's all my fault he has lost everything. He seems to blame me for bringing all this to light, and considering his mental state, I fear for my safety if he has access to me. I will also consider police protection when he returns to Australia. Perhaps you could let me know when he does. She never did tell me when he returned to Australia. I found out by chance that he'd moved to Melbourne. He moved a couple of suburbs away from me, set up teaching yoga, practicing massage, giving massages, energy healing. January 2012. A letter I wrote to Swami Atma Muktananda at Rockland Yoga Ashram. I'm unsure if you know, Hari Om Swami Atma Muktananda, I am unsure if you know that I'm one of the 3 women who were sexually violated by Swami at Manly Yoga in 2010. It takes an incredible amount of courage to come forward and report such issues, especially in a community as close-knit as ours. I only found the courage after I discovered that I was not the only one and that therefore other women may be in danger. The two other women who also made statements against would never have come forward if I had not done so first. The abuse of women would have continued and remained hidden. I had served at Mangrove for 3 years before being sent to Manly. I didn't expect to have to defend myself in an ashram, a place where I previously felt completely safe. I trusted Purna sannyasins as people of the highest integrity. Unfortunately, sexually harassed and assaulted me, shattering this trust. I was deeply disappointed with the way the matter was handled by the most senior staff at Mangrove. My idealistic and perhaps naive view of swamis has been forever changed. I couldn't bear to stay in that environment, so I left my home and job at Manly Yoga, moved to Melbourne, and completely withdrew from the whole Satyananda-yoga community. I had lost more than my innocence. I lost faith in the tradition and guru, and I lost my entire spiritual community, a community that was the centre of my life. I know that I can heal myself from this traumatic experience, and I have spent the last year actively working on this. I'm still trying to process all that has happened as consciously, honestly, bravely, and thoroughly as I can. Though isolation has been necessary for me to do this, I miss the yoga community terribly. I understand that was temporarily banned for some time from visiting the ashrams, including Rockland, but that this time has probably elapsed by now. I believe he's now living in Melbourne, so I wonder if he's likely to visit Rockland this year. Given my complete loss of community, I would very much like to visit Rockland. I long to feel safe in an ashram and to have positive experiences there. But I hope you can understand that I do not feel ready to come face to face with Is it possible for me to visit Rockland when he will not be there? I think this would be a very important step in my healing journey, and I would appreciate a prompt reply to my request. She did reply promptly by email. And this is what she wrote. 25th of January 2012. Hari Om Premjyoti. You are welcome to visit Rockland. I believe is still not able to visit the ashrams, so it is very unlikely that you will encounter him at Rockland. Mangrove will inform me whenever his ban is lifted. We do ask that if you visit the ashram, that your experience is not shared with guests or residents in the ashram. As I had very little information and knowledge of this event, I would also prefer not to enter into any discussions on the matter. I am not just brushing the event or your letter aside, but without full knowledge of the events or involvement in the decisions made against, I am not able to make any comment. I trust your classes are going well. Blessings of peace and joy, Swami Atmamuktananda Saraswati. I had also included with that letter my full statement that was provided to the police. June 26th, 2012. Jayatma wrote to me. June 2012. This is from Jayatma to me. She says, I wanted to let you know that SYA is preparing to lift the ban on visiting Mangrove and Rockland. We've spent considerable time reviewing reports from his psychologist, his mentor and others about his behaviour. We've come to the conclusion that whilst his behaviour has not been perfect in the time since the Manly Yoga incident, there has been a significant amount of reflection, learning and effort to change on the part of In light of this, we will be allowing him to visit Mangrove or Rockland as a guest. At that point, of course, I expressed my disappointment with the decision. There was some backwards and forth communication about the practicalities of managing visits to the ashram. So I raised some concerns about the details of his visits and his access, and I received a letter from Jayatma saying that we are now re-reviewing this in light of some more information. So soon after that, in August 2012, here in Melbourne, in one of my local cafes, I came across this. I ripped it down, of course. He was living nearby. By this stage, he had run off with Katie Rose. They'd set up Ishani House, a yoga centre. He was working there, living there, and practicing powerful deep tissue massage and energy healing. So I wrote to Jayatma. I sent her a copy of the flyer. Told her that I was very disturbed about it. So that was in August 2012. In September in 2012, I received a copy of a letter from SYA to Hariam. SYA has reviewed your situation. You are permitted to visit Mangrove and Rockland ashrams from October 2012. And there's a number of conditions attached to that. I initially found that out from first, who was informed before me that was allowed to return to the ashrams. Jayatma wrote me a letter. This is in October 2012. She says, you may have heard from that she was already informed of this information. I have held off with you as I have been going back and forth, negotiating with Atma Mukti, as she wanted me to lighten the conditions for visits to Rockland. I also heard from Jayatma that there had been discussions between her and Kriyatma and Purnaseva. Actually, no, it might not have been Purnaseva, it was probably Sadashiva. But basically the blokes at Mangrove had disagreed with my belief that should not be allowed to wear geru in the ashrams. And they disagreed with that, and they argued with Jayatma. And that was one of the points of contention about his visits to the ashram and what his role would be when he visited the ashram. So I was aware that the men at Mangrove were supporting in that way. They believed it was his right to wear geru in the ashram. In November 2012, I received a phone call from a woman called Jane, who had been previously my psychotherapist here in Melbourne. And she had another client. Her name was and had gone to unsuspectingly for a massage. She was sexually abused by him at that time here in Melbourne. She happened to have Jane as her psychotherapist. Pure coincidence. Jane was faced with knowing the history of through me and having another client come to her with reports of sexual abuse. Jane herself had also unsuspectingly gone to a shanty house for a massage, been faced with knew who he was, and left. Refused to have a massage with him. He was in my space, he was in my community. He was facing people that I knew. Anyway, I didn't know I'd never met her before. But Jane, the therapist, rang me and she was furious with SYA. She was furious that what had happened had been allowed to happen and had continued to the point now where another woman, a fourth woman, had been abused. So I put her in touch with Jayatma and with Sarah, who was the original investigating lawyer. She rang them both and completely blasted them. And she got through to them, finally. They wouldn't listen to me, but she was a person of authority, so they listened to her. Also, through communications between me and Jane, also provided a statement about her experience, which she sent to Mangrove. And at that point, through me, all of us communicating, we arranged, Jane contacted the sex offences and, sex offences and child
investigation.
Yeah, the police down here in Victoria, and got a caseworker or whatever, some police person who was assigned the case, and we were all requested to give statements again. So I gave them my statement again. Gave a police statement. I contacted the other two women from Manly who were abused. They both finally made police statements. And Jayatma also made a statement to the police. Finally, this was finally we'd got through to Jayatma, or Jane had managed to. And it was as a result of all of that coming to pass that eventually, after 2.5 years, SYA cancelled his teacher's accreditation and permanently banned him from the ashrams here in Australia. It was a very, very bittersweet victory for me. I'd suffered a lot, and I felt that it had been 2.5 years of fighting for that to happen. And I was devastated that another woman had to be abused before they came to that decision. And that woman ended up becoming a yoga student of mine and a friend. And I had to witness her trauma. Since then, has had 4 strokes and is still learning to walk and talk again.